listener production.
Hi, Helen Smith here with you. Welcome to The Briefing. Australians have been called a scammer's dream, sometimes losing thousands of dollars, so much so that we have a National Scam Week. And with the NRL and AFL seasons wrapping up and finals kicking off, fans are furiously buying tickets to the finals, creating a harvest time for scammers.
Australians lost an estimated $26 million to those sorts of scams, buying and selling things that didn't really exist last year. And ticket sales are a big part of that.
That's coming up in the second half of this episode. But first, Dan Mullins is here with the headlines. It's Friday, the 29th of August.
Hey Helen, and to you listening. Authorities have offered sovereign citizen gunman Desi Freeman a surrender plan as the manhunt for the alleged gunman continues. Freeman shot and killed two police officers, Neil Thompson and Vadim Devort, in rural Victoria earlier this week while they were issuing a search warrant before fleeing on foot into bushland armed with multiple deadly weapons. Superintendent Brett Kahn put out a call to the alleged gunman, making a public plea and offering Freeman support.
If Desi Freeman's watching this, ring 000. We will support a surrender plan. That option's open to him, absolutely.
Police now enter their fourth day of the search, with one former neighbour of the alleged gunman, Loretta Quinn, saying Freeman would know the locations of the old mines and caves to use as shelter and that he'd have it all set up. It also comes as Quinn says he used to spy on her with drones and use their block to access Mount Buffalo National Park, which they allowed for a while until it became too frequent and Freeman overstepped.
The police told you you're not allowed to come here.
Where's your boundary?
This is my mother's property. Do you own property?
Show me your boundary.
You're not allowed to be here, man.
Mate, look, GPS.
So that's my mum's
Satellite
property.
map. You know where your boundary is?
That was Quinn's son there, and when Freeman's former neighbour told him to stop accessing her land, things escalated until it resulted in Freeman's landlord forcing him and his family to leave. Police advised the public to stay away from the search area over the weekend.
Russia has been accused of mocking recent peace efforts in its war with Ukraine after a drone strike in Kyiv struck an important NATO meeting. At least 19 people were killed, including 4 children. It's prompted European leaders to call for increased pressure from the United States and NATO against Russian President Vladimir Putin. The strike damaged the building hosting the European Union delegation in Kyiv.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen spoke to US President Donald Trump and later addressed the delegation.
And this is another grim reminder of what is at stake. It shows that the Kremlin will stop at nothing to terrorize Ukraine, blindly killing civilians, men, women and children, and even targeting the European Union.
The delegation meeting was being held in the British Council building in Kyiv, with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer confirming the building had been hit, while French President Emmanuel Macron said Russia had deliberately targeted residential areas.
More than 600 missiles and drones struck Kyiv overnight, resulting in 500 rescue workers and 1,000 police officers being deployed in the rescue and clean-up mission.
California Governor Gavin Newsom says Donald Trump is serious about running a third term as US president, telling a summit hosted by Politico in Sacramento his concerns.
I don't think Donald Trump wants another election. This guy doesn't believe in free, fair elections.
Newsom, who is considered a future presidential contender, told the crowd he had a growing stack of Trump 2028 hats, a gift from the president's supporters. And he also pointed to renovations Trump has ordered at the White House mirroring the Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida.
You think he's joking about 2028? Who spends $200 million on a ballroom at their home and then leaves the house?
Newsom claimed Trump raised the issue at a meeting at the White House this week when Newsom was asking for more money for California to recover after the deadly Los Angeles fires. He said Trump pointed to a picture of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the only president to serve more than 2 terms, and then went on and on about a third term. The US Constitution limits presidents to 2 terms. FDR was able to serve more than 2 because at the time the Constitution had no limit on terms served.
New domestic violence laws in Queensland have been criticised for fears they may be weaponised against victim survivors. Police will be able to issue on-the-spot domestic violence orders under new legislation passed by the Queensland Parliament late yesterday. officers will be able to issue a 12-month order without having to go to court. Police are also not required to get the consent of a suspected victim before issuing an order.
Critics say it raises concerns that police could identify the victim of domestic violence as the perpetrator. The Queensland Council of Social Services said 44.4% of women murdered in domestic violence incidents had been misidentified at least once. That number swells to almost 100% in relation to Indigenous women. The new laws come into effect from January next year.
And runners from across the globe will be charging across the iconic Harbour Bridge this weekend for the Sydney Marathon. This year, the 42.2-kilometre race will be part of the World Marathon Majors Series for the first time, prompting the event to attract some big names in the running world, including Safan Hassan, a current Olympic champion, and Eliud Kipchoge, known as the best marathon runner of all time, winning 11 world major events.
I don't need to prove anything, but I want to still press on to promote the movement. I believe running is the movement.
35,000 runners will attempt to cross the finish line, with $30,000 up for grabs for the first local in the elite men's and women's events, plus a bonus $10,000 for anyone who breaks the current Australian records. The Sydney event has introduced a ballot system like the other major marathons as sign-ups become increasingly popular amid the running boom we've seen in Australia. The event is set to shut down Sydney CBD this Sunday, with the finish line at one of our most recognisable landmarks, the Sydney Opera House.
Now, Dan, I want to know, have you ever run a marathon?
No.
No?
No.
Do you plan on it?
No.
Same. I don't plan on it either.
I'll be watching it on TV.
Yeah, I'm going to pop down and
Cheering
have a
them
look.
on.
Yeah, I think it's such a great event for Sydney, but look, I haven't. But we want to know if you guys are running in the marathon this weekend. Let us know on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. But that brings our headlines to a close for today. Thank you, Dan, for joining me all of this week. We'll have Chris Spiru back next week. But now, Dan, is your deep dive into ticket scams and why to be on the lookout with the footy finals around the corner and the summer festival season heating up. Have a listen to that coming up next.
It's Scams Awareness Week. With the AFL and NRL finals about to kick off and everyone clambering for tickets to this summer's festivals, we're being warned to be on the lookout for scammers. And the Australian Banking Association says Australians lost more than $26 million to buying and selling scams last year, with fake tickets among the most common. We all like to think we know what to look out for and that we won't be a victim of the scams, but clearly a lot of us are. So what do you look for, and what are scammers doing now to lure us in to lose our money? Dr Dimitrios Salampasis is an emerging technology expert at Swinburne University. Dr Dimitrios, thanks for joining us on The Briefing. What are scammers doing now that they maybe weren't doing last time I was queuing online for tickets, say last year's final series?
So scamming has evolved quite a lot. So you probably would probably receive, let's say, a text or an SMS scam that would offer you maybe a discount for a ticket or a free ticket. You maybe receive an email scam, which would do the same. You may see scam messages on social media that there are, available tickets, or tickets are free, or, you can buy tickets from this particular space. Or you may even get messages which provide you with a website to get a ticket, but the website is a fake, which actually means it's a cloned website of even the providers or the ticket sellers, but then behind that it's a scammer. So basically all transactions will be redirected towards a scammer.
So we're continually told to only book via official sites. Are the scammers infiltrating those sites as well?
Could be. And we've seen examples in the past with scammers, cloning websites of organizations that are providing donations, or cloning websites of even banking institutions, or websites of legitimate organizations, or even impersonating people working in legitimate organizations to conduct different types of businesses. And these people actually assume that they are talking to a legitimate person while behind them it's a scammer. So yes, and especially with deepfake technology and all that, you can see such incidents occurring. I mean, I don't think it would be the first type of, or the most, let's say, frequent way to see a website being cloned. But yes, we have seen cases on that as well.
Checking the URL of a web page is a common tactic to check if the page you're buying your tickets from is the real deal. Is that still a viable way of checking, or are scammers outsmarting us on that as well?
Definitely scammers would outsmart, but I mean, URL is definitely a way to go. But I mean, you can also see, for example, you may have a website which has typos. You may have a website which looks good, but probably something is not right. You maybe also want to check and compare with the real website. Let's check some photos online to see what the real website of the provider is presented. Or you may even see some delays in the way a potential transaction is being processed. Or you may see missing information or information that don't really make sense. So there are ways to understand if a website is legit or fake, but it just needs a second pair of eyes, and it needs a little bit more thinking rather than just simply jumping on it.
Yeah, and I guess there's that emotion. My team's made the grand final, or that artist that I've just discovered is going to be playing at that festival. So you're kind of in that zone where you maybe are letting your guard down a little bit.
And you know, this is what actually scammers are hoping for. They're hoping to actually leverage on this emotional power, to leverage on this fear of missing out, to leverage on the enthusiasm that a potential victim might have by receiving a news that, oh, you've won a ticket, or there are still tickets available, or be able to, leverage on this sentimental feeling and this emotional feeling of surprise, or emotional feeling of wanting to be part of something big. And that's why they are pushing for these kind of messages. Absolutely.
And then there's the festival tickets I've missed out, or the grand final ticket that I've missed out on, and then somebody says, hey, I can't go. That's surely got to be rife with scamming.
Sure. And I mean, we've seen cases as well with potential, scammers offering tickets or offering to facilitate a transaction and all that, of course, for a fee. And there you see different areas around, okay, you have a ticket. Is it a legit ticket? Is it a valid ticket? You can check the QR code. You can check all these different elements that a real ticket would look like. Is it actually a policy for the provider to be able to share tickets or sell tickets outside of their own ecosystem? Or if someone approaches you to facilitate a transaction, why would you trust that person? What kind of connections that person has? What's the fee that the person is wanting? So it's a bit of a common sense we have to start thinking about. But again, Dan, I fully agree. People sometimes are carried away with their enthusiasm and they wouldn't look at the details. And sometimes overlooking these details can be catastrophic.
And over the past year, Dr. Dimitrios, we've seen a crackdown on dynamic ticket pricing. Has that model increased the number of people being scammed?
Could be. I'm sure there is some sort of a correlation there. I wouldn't say that would be a direct effect, but definitely people wanting to access, and that want of access and access exclusively, that's also something that scammers would be looking at. So yes, there could be a correlation, but I wouldn't think it would be a direct correlation.
Okay. What's the golden rule to staying safe from scammers?
Well, we live in times of digitalization. We all live and breathe in a digital era in the virtual spaces. So by default, all of us are prone to be scammed. All of us are vulnerable to illicit activities. I think the main ways to stay as safe as possible is to step back and think, observe, think, is this legit? Is it too good to be true? Does it make sense? Is this something I would trust? Do I need to verify? Is there, for example, a phone number I could call? Is there a chatbot I could use? Is there an alternative way to verify? Is this a legit way that an organization would actually reach out to me as a customer? So you need to think also from an organization standpoint. Would, let's say, AFL reach out to me as a customer in this channel? Is this a policy they would, or a practice they would operate? And also, talk to people, share. Let's say if you receive such a message, take a step back. Look, is there a typo? Is this something that a legitimate organization would send? But mainly it's all around common sense and not just jumping because of enthusiasm.
That was Dr. Dimitrios Salampasis, an emerging technology expert at Swinburne University. Simon Birmingham is CEO of the Australian Banking Association. Simon, thanks for your time. One of the things that stood out to me in your media release of this week, Scams Awareness Week, was artificial intelligence. What role is AI playing in scamming us?
Well, AI is increasingly playing really two roles. One is by the scammers who are using AI to be able to develop new capacities to really trick people, trick them by having more effective voices that could sound like, indeed, even a loved one, but particularly sound like celebrities, financial experts or the like. That's translating not just into voices, but also into visual technologies and mediums, as well as, of course, more sophisticated messages, ads, targets that can really be personalised ever more to individual circumstances through the power and tools of AI. But it's also increasingly being used by banks, regulators and others to try to better protect, to make sure that the power of data and intelligence can better pick up where scams are happening and try to close down transfers where possible and give more effective evidence and information to people.
Simon, I asked this same question to Dimitrios a short while ago. As the final series heats up and we might see our team there in the finals and we're really excited about it, emotion takes over. Is AI making the most of that vulnerability?
Well, there's definitely a spiking that occurs in terms of buying and selling scams around this time of year. So, Australians lost an estimated $26 million to those sorts of scams, buying and selling things that didn't really exist last year. And ticket sales are a big part of that. It can be big concerts, Tay-Tay coming to town and so forth. But of course, also this time of year, Adelaide Crows are playing in the first finals for many years. And as a Crows fan, I'm pretty desperate to get along and I want to get my tickets. And sometimes that desperation leads you to take risks that you wouldn't otherwise do. And that's where there's a warning to people that if you're deviating from the standard ticket sales platforms, if you're not using an authorised reselling site, then you start to become at risk. And if people are asking you to transfer money through crypto, to pay them in gift cards, to do those sorts of things that might seem a little unusual, well, if it seems unusual, it's probably because it's dodgy and therefore you should apply real concern and check before you actually send any money off.
Do the banks have scammers working for them so that they can stay ahead of the scammers? How do you get your intel of what's happening inside?
Well, I don't know that the banks would quite call their teams scammers, but absolutely you've got to obviously put yourself in the shoes of those who are applying the tricks and really try to make sure that you are staying as best as possible one step ahead of them. But one of the things that I've done in working with banks in the short period of time I've done so that was really quite sad and depressing is I've heard some of the phone calls between call centres for banks and customers who are concerned that the bank is slowing down or stopping a transaction going through. And the customer arguing with the call centre operator to say, I want to send this money because I've been told it's for this purpose and I believe it. And the bank is saying, look, we can't be certain, but all of the red flags are there that say this might be a scam. And sadly, there are cases where people absolutely insist, and in the end, it's their money, but once it's gone, it's really hard to get back. And that is the reason why, as a banking industry, we don't want to see people lose their money. And why we're so active in terms of scams awareness and the anti-scams framework that we've worked on with government, and indeed wanting to see tech companies and others do more so that there is less of this stuff to hook people in the first place.
Just finally, is there a golden rule, something I definitely shouldn't do?
You definitely shouldn't take unsolicited messages that then end up with you buying gift cards, transferring money by unusual means. Those are real red flags. Use the legitimate sites if you're buying your footy finals tickets. Use normal legitimate platforms. And ultimately, if you're getting calls or messages, disconnect and use known numbers to go back and check that it is who they say they are, whether it's a family member or indeed any type of professional financial firm.
Simon Birmingham, thanks for your time.
Thanks so much. My pleasure.
That was Simon Birmingham, Chief Executive of the Australian Banking Association. The federal government's Scamwatch website is a great place to find out how to identify the most recent scams and how to avoid them. Scamwatch.gov.au. That's all we have time for in this episode of The Briefing. Thanks for your company. Be sure to check your feed for the PM episode of The Briefing this afternoon.